MAZ 2000. This revolutionary tractor, both in its design and construction, was meant to become a symbol of Perestroika, the essence of which lay in the deep socialist economic reforms introduced by the first president of the USSR, Mikhail Gorbachev, reforms that were supposed to fundamentally change life in the Soviet Union. According to the plans of the communist leadership, the Soviet Union was supposed to enter the new, third millennium as one of the most innovative countries in the world. And in order to bring these ambitious plans to life, starting with Gorbachev's Perestroika, the industrial sector, including the automotive industry, was required to put forward bold ideas and implement new projects. As part of the innovation development strategy, centers for youth scientific and technical creativity were established at many enterprises. A similar organization was established at the Minsk Automobile Plant. It was made up of 5 young, ambitious engineers. The main task of this center was to create a promising model of a long-haul tractor unit, which was to replace the outdated, conservative MAZ trucks that at the time formed the backbone of Soviet long-distance transportation. Similar developments had been underway in Minsk since the 70s. The main task set before the designers was to create a tractor unit that, within the legally permitted length of a road train, could transport significantly more cargo. To achieve this, the designers believed it was simply necessary to increase the volume of the cargo compartment by reducing the free space between the cab and the front wall of the semi-trailer. In 1978, these ideas were even realized in a full-scale model built by a young engineer, Viktor Saivalobov. The design of this truck model was, to put it mildly, unusual. The tractor's cab was attached not to the chassis frame, but to the front wall of the semi-trailer. And the tractor itself was a 2-axle, fully steerable platform without a cab, to which the semi-trailer was attached via a 5th-wheel coupling mechanism. The construction of this type of tractor was undertaken not only in the USSR, but also in the USA. They made an attempt to look into the future and created a sketch of the A-Future tank truck 1960, the 1960 tanker road train. It, like Saivalobov's model, had a chassis that turned independently of the cab. Whether the engineer from Minsk saw these sketches is unknown, but the concept of advanced tractors is very similar. In the 70s, the idea of unusual tractors was abandoned. Officials from the automotive ministry did not want to spend extra money on development, and were not eager to give up the good old MAZ trucks. Simple, conservative trucks allowed the production plan for automotive transport to be fulfilled without unnecessary hassle. Everything changed with the start of Perestroika. The new communist leadership welcomed unusual and bold projects. That's why in 1986, work on the advanced tractor at the Minsk Automobile Plant resumed. Sketches of the future truck were created, which the chief designer of the MAZ plant, Mikhail Vysotsky, took to Moscow for approval. At the automotive ministry, the concept of the advanced tractor was approved. And already in the following year, 1987, a whole department of about 20 specialists was established at the Minsk plant, dedicated exclusively to work on the future modular tractor with the promising name MAZ 2000 Perestroika. This innovative truck was meant to become a symbol of all the progressive changes brought by Gorbachev's reforms. And the 2000 index in its name was aimed at the future, when, at the turn of the millennium, the entire industry of the USSR was supposed to be based on innovation and advanced technologies. At least, that's what the communist officials involved in Perestroika were hoping for. By early 1988, a full-scale model of the vehicle had already been created. The first running prototype of the road train, equipped with an engine from an Icarus bus, was built in May 1988. It was this very vehicle that would be sent to a closed government presentation in Moscow, and later placed in a special pavilion at the Auto Design 88 exhibition at the Exhibition of Achievements of National Economy of the USSR, which was closed to the general public. At the end of the summer of 1988, another prototype of the tractor was built, featuring a slightly modified design and construction. This vehicle was developed specifically to participate in the Paris Motor Show, with its wheels covered by aerodynamic fairings and the Icarus engine replaced by a MAN engine. And to make sure the foreign audience could easily remember the tractor's name, it was given the striking name Perestroika. This very Russian word, which was used to describe Gorbachev's reforms in the second half of the 80s, was known all over the world. At the Paris exhibition, the vehicle caused a real sensation. Many French people couldn't even believe that the tractor was built in the USSR. It was so different from the other vehicles being produced in the Soviet Union at that time. The MAZ Perestroika attracted particular interest from representatives of leading global automotive companies, and the press covering the Paris Motor Show called the Perestroika tractor-trailer the road train of the 21st century. As a result of the Paris Motor Show, the Soviet vehicle was awarded a gold medal for outstanding technical solutions. So what exactly made this machine innovative? Well, first of all, in the modular design concept, which was different from the traditional road trains of the time that consisted of a classic truck tractor and a semi-trailer. Such tractors have a conventional design, a frame, a chassis, with the engine and transmission mounted to the front part of the frame, and all of this is covered by a cab, which is also attached to the frame. With this kind of truck design, it's impossible to fit the cargo section of the semi-trailer right up against the cab, because when turning, the cab shifts and needs extra free space behind it. This means that the only way to increase the usable area of the truck in this situation is by either making the semi-trailer taller or lengthening it at the rear. But even here, it's not that simple, because the overall dimensions of truck trains are strictly regulated by law. So, according to many engineers, the most optimal solution in this situation was to use the free space behind the cab. But then, how would the truck be able to turn? That's a fair question, as you might point out. And the answer is actually quite simple, thanks to a modular design where the tractor is essentially split horizontally into two separate modules. The cab, which is attached to the body rather than the tractor's frame, and the lower traction module, which can turn relative to the cab. In this way, when turning, there was no longer any need for free space between the cab and the cargo compartment, since the cab remained stationary and only the lower traction module turned. All of this looked quite unusual, especially when turning. It could give the impression that the truck had been in an accident, and the lower part of the cab had shifted to the side. It was precisely these developments that the designers at the Minsk Automobile Plant used back in the 70s when building the Perestroika tractor. The pulling function of such a road train was performed not by a traditional tractor with a full cab, but by a standard traction module, which consisted of an engine, gearbox, main drive, control system units, braking and pneumatic independent suspension systems, as well as single driving wheels. All of this was assembled into a single unit measuring 3 by 2.5 meters. An unusual component of this design was the 12-speed gearbox developed by MAZ engineers. Gear shifting in it was carried out using an electro-pneumatic mechanism, which was operated by a small joystick located in the cab. The gearbox was installed directly behind the engine and combined into a single unit with the high-point main drive. But the engine in the truck was imported, a MAN 2866 flat-six with a power output of 290 horsepower. It was planned to create road trains with various chassis configurations and numbers of semi-trailers and trailers. The cab of this truck was also unusual. It was large and had a frame panel construction, so there was no need to set up a stamping production line to manufacture it. In terms of comfort, it was hard to compare it to the cramped cabs that were installed on Soviet long-haul tractors of that time. It could please the driver and passenger with a flat floor throughout the entire area, allowing them to stand up straight, and with a large panoramic windshield. It was equipped with a pull-out modular table, a refrigerator, cabinets, a spacious shelf for belongings along the upper edge of the windshield, and folding seats that were borrowed from the Scania 142 truck, which happened to end up at the Minsk factory after an accident. The doors on the MAZ Perestroika were made sliding, with a pneumatic drive. Like all full-fledged long-haul tractors, the MAZ 2000 was equipped with 2 sleeping berths, an upper one, 800 mm wide, and a lower fold-down sleeping shelf. And that's not all. Drivers also had access to technical amenities such as air conditioning, a television, a stereo, an electric stove for cooking, a radio station, and a rear-view camera. The cabin length is 1,780 millimeters. The overall design concept of the cabin was borrowed by MAZ engineers from the Renault Virage V10 concept car, which was showcased in 1985 and would later become the prototype for the Renault Magnum. The MAZ 2000 Perestroika became innovative thanks to the design of its pivoting traction module, which allowed the cabin and cargo compartment to be joined into a single, seamless unit. This drastically improved the aerodynamics of the road train and made it possible to increase the body volume. The curb weight of the base road train was 12 tons, with a total weight of 33 tons. The low drag coefficient of the MAZ 2000 made it the most streamlined road train of its time, both in the USSR and in Europe. The improved aerodynamics also contributed to increased fuel efficiency and better dynamic performance of the truck, which could reach speeds of up to 120 kilometers per hour. In total, by the early 90s, 3 units of the modular MAZ 2000 Perestroika tractor had been built. The first vehicle, which was presented at the Moscow exhibition Auto Design 88, turned out to be not very successful. The engine from the cars was frankly underpowered, and a bearing from a radar, which was used as a swivel joint, did not perform its function well. Therefore, this vehicle was dismantled and became a donor of spare parts for the third prototype. The MAZ 2000 Perestroika, which was presented at the Paris exhibition, turned out to be more successful. After returning to the USSR, the vehicle underwent significant restyling. The headlights were moved to the cab body. According to the traffic safety regulations in force at the time, the beam of the headlights was not allowed to deviate from the axis of the vehicle. Therefore, the headlights on the MAZ 2000 had to be moved from the rotating traction module to the front part of the cab, and the front part of the module was equipped with air intake slots for better engine cooling. The third vehicle, which was built in 1989, was initially also a 3-axle model, partially using components from the previous prototype, but most of them, including the engines and axles, were completely replaced, after which the third vehicle became a 4-axle model. Despite the rather successful design, the MAZ 2000 tractors were never put into mass production. This was prevented by the deep political and economic crisis that engulfed the Soviet Union in the early 90s. And already in December 1991, just 9 years short of the long-awaited start of the third millennium, the Soviet Union collapsed, leaving behind 15 independent states in the new crisis conditions of the transition period. The small country of Belarus was never able to establish mass production of the MAZ 2000 Perestroika. Such vehicles were expensive to produce and maintain, and required a complete overhaul of the freight transport infrastructure, as well as a revision of the standards regulating the technical requirements for trucks. That is why mass production of such mainline tractors was not established not only in Belarus, but anywhere in the world. Although such a concept of modular mainline tractors would look quite interesting somewhere in Australia, with their fascination for long road trains that, instead of rail transport, cover the country's main logistics needs. As for the MAZ 2000 Perestroika, some work on this project was still ongoing as late as 1993. By that time, about 40 test reports had been compiled, and the second and third prototypes had each covered about 6,000 kilometers. Afterwards, the fate of the vehicles turned out differently. The first MAZ 2000, as we already mentioned, was dismantled for parts, while the second one, which took part in the Paris exhibition, continued to be used in tests for some time after that, and was then sent to the factory lot in Minsk, where it rusted until 2006, after which it was simply scrapped for metal. The third 4-axle truck was the luckiest among them. It was kept in good technical condition for many years and even drove in the parade for the 50th anniversary of the MAZ factory, and in 2002 it took part in a retro technology festival in Minsk. After that, the truck stood forgotten for another 8 years somewhere in the backyards of the vast MAZ factory grounds. And only in 2010 was it cleaned of dirt, repainted, and installed as a monument at the entrance of the MAZ factory, where it still stands today as a living witness to the Perestroika era, which, instead of being a springboard into an innovative third millennium, turned into a heavy metal wrecking ball for the USSR, used to demolish old and decaying buildings.